We're still live from the DA elective Congress that's taking place here at Gallagher Estate in Midrand. Just to let you know where we are at the moment, delegates are voting on the constitutional amendments. We'll take you inside there when we do have the opportunity, but I want to bring in now Mr. Retief Odendaal, who is the Nelson Mandela Bay Mayor. Let's talk about some of the issues in that particular aspect. Mr. Odendaal, thank you very much indeed for your time. So I think let's just go to 2021. There was a bit of a reduction in the vote in Nelson Mandela Bay. What went wrong there? Let's start there.
Well, I think there were a number of issues that the electorate faced. Unfortunately, there was a new system that the IEC introduced, the voter management system, and I think that it was difficult for the number of voters that came out previously to actually came out on the day to be able to cast their votes. We saw long queues, people unable to vote. So unfortunately, I think that the IEC wasn't as well prepared. I think also one must remember that Nelson Mandela Bay has seen a number of coalition governments, and perhaps, possibly, the electorate wasn't very happy with the performance of some of those coalition governments. One must remember Nelson Mandela Bay since 2009 and today, we've had 37 municipal managers and 10 mayors between 2009 and today. So there's certainly not been stability in Nelson Mandela Bay, and that has led to a lack of service delivery.
I was about to get there. That all filters down to what the ordinary man has to experience on the ground with the lack of service delivery while the political bickering continues. What do you say then if we look towards an all-important election that comes up next year? You know, how do you then say to the general populace, you know, we are the ones to be able to turn things around in Nelson Mandela Bay, because there are a number of challenges that, you know, residents will speak about that speak to the fact that they're not getting what it is that they want from those in leadership there.
Well, I think that we are an excellent example of what can be achieved if you put your own personal interests aside and party political interests aside and work together. In Nelson Mandela Bay, we currently have a 10-party coalition. It's the biggest coalition in the country, possibly the world. And we've seen that Nelson Mandela Bay, up till the previous financial year, 2022, has recorded some of the worst service delivery records to date since its formation in 2000. Over the last 6 months, we've been able to stabilize the city, and we've been able to, by working together, by ensuring that we put the interest of the residents first. Remember that the majority of those coalition partners were actually coalition partners of the ANC first, but they turned their back on the ANC because they were saying to us that the ANC is actually causing brand damage to the other political parties because they were governing so badly. And within a short space of time, we've been able to make progress. And I want to use some of the examples. The fact that we could actually get a housing delivery program back on track. Previously, the city couldn't build houses.
I want to refer back to, I think it was 2016, when I think was it Musi Maimane as well as Helen Zille had been in that part several times in trying to, you know, speak to the people of that area about what the Democratic Alliance can do for them. In 2021, that was very different. Did that play a role in what we then became to see in terms of the visibility of leadership? Because it's a vast difference between what we saw in 2021 and what was seen back then in 2016. Several times Ms. Zille had been there.
Well, I think that there were a lot of leadership visits in the running up to the 2016 election, but there was also a lot of federal leadership, DA federal leadership in Nelson Mandela Bay in the run up to the election. So I wouldn't really say that there wasn't, you know, you can actually compare that.
In comparison, there were several visits that were made there by Ms. Helen Zille. I'm not sure exactly how many times.
Actually stayed in Nelson Mandela Bay for a month in the run-up to the 2021. And we just believe that we actually did relatively well in Nelson Mandela Bay in the 2021 elections. Yes, not as well as we wanted to do, but it was still a good electoral result. And we had the majority of the votes in Nelson Mandela Bay. We're still the biggest party in Nelson Mandela Bay.
I want to talk about nationally, 500,000 votes that was back in 2019. Are those policy and leadership missteps that the Democratic Alliance would admit was part of the problem then?
Look, I think that there was a federal report that was commissioned after the 2019 elections that highlighted a number of issues. But the reality is that political parties go up and down. If you see that there was an outcry because the DA lost, I think, not even 2% in that election. And the reality
but it was
is that
500,000. You talk percentage points, but I'm talking about actual numbers. 500,000, that was nationally.
Yes, but in the same election, the ANC lost 6 to 7%. So if you compare it, the two bigger parties did certainly lose some support, but it was actually negligible, and we clawed back all of that support in the 2021
How do you
elections.
recapture those lost constituencies?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is through proving that you are a viable alternative. The reality is there's only two parties in the country that governs. It's either the ANC or the DA, and then a number of formations through those two parties. And we are the only alternative to the ANC, and we've proven where we govern, we deliver more services to more people, and we have stable governments that actually functions. There's a reason why unemployment in the Western Cape is the lowest in the country. There's a reason why the healthcare in the Western Cape actually works.
I want to talk about Nelson Mandela Bay. We're aware of what's happening in the Western Cape. I want to talk about your constituency. There are concerns in that particular area where residents say not enough is being done yet. They'd like to see more changes, that will benefit them at the end of the day, and none of what we've seen in the past of political bickering that has had a direct impact on the fact that people aren't able to get proper services. I mean, how do you then deal with an aspect like that?
So political parties must understand that coalition governments are here to stay. And they must understand that they have to work together, put their own selfish needs aside, and work together for the greater good and for the people of their respective municipalities and provinces. And in Nelson Mandela Bay, we've done over the last 6 months been able to stabilize that administration. The city nearly ran out of water last year. We brought online a number of very critical water augmentation projects to prevent the city from running out of water. We've managed to kickstart our housing delivery program. In the previous financial year, only 28 houses were built. We have already built more than 450, well on our way to build 800 houses. We've been able to secure additional funding for the city, nearly 900 million rand additional funding, whilst the previous governments lost more than R1 billion in 3 years.
Is that enough?
No, but it's a start.
Okay.
It's a start in order to bring stability back to Nelson Mandela Bay.
In addition to stability, you'd want to see yourself retain Nelson Mandela Bay, through this coalition. But then, in addition to water, the water challenges that you spoke of, which had been long-standing, the residents of that area had been complaining about that. But certainly more needs to be done. Then, what are you offering on the table? Let's say in the run-up to the country's next election, there's certainly something more that you need to bring to the table to say, look, we have a lesson here nationally of 500,000 votes that had been lost. What is it that we did wrong that we need to look at look at ourselves as the Democratic Alliance and say, this is where we can improve?
Well, I think if you look at the city and the improvements that we've made over the last 6 months, Nelson Mandela Bay was broken by design so that people can loot from it. We've managed in the last 6 months to achieve a number of critical service delivery milestones.
Yeah.
For example, there's been an increase of about 50% in the key performance indicators that were met compared to the previous 2 financial years. So people on the ground are feeling that the city is moving forward. Yes, it's not perfect. It is not nearly perfect, and we still have a long way to go because the city was so broken over the last couple of years. But it has shown where political parties put their interests aside and work together, they can actually achieve brilliant things. And we've seen it in our city. If you look at the rest of the municipalities in the Eastern Cape, only 2 of them are not governed by the ANC. And if you look at our municipalities in the Eastern Cape, they are broken, dysfunctional, and bankrupt. In certain areas, it looks like there is a civil war undergo because the infrastructure is so broken. That's the DA difference. We've proven that in the Koga municipality, our neighbours, that we can actually deliver and make a tangible difference to people's lives. And we're proving it in Nelson Mandela Bay, together with our coalition partners.
There's also a criticism, somewhere. I mean, you made an example about the Western Cape, for example. I'll bring that in again. The criticism that the Democratic Alliance looks after constituencies that are in the more affluent areas. Okay, you'd have people in townships, in New Brighton or wherever it is, who would say, "Listen, we need more to be done." The same criticism would be in the Western Cape, where you would be aware of it, with those who sit in places like Khayelitsha or Gugulethu will say, "But there's only a certain sector of this area where you govern that is being looked after." How do you change that narrative?
Well, one must be mindful that our opposition wants to paint a specific picture. But let me tell you the facts in Nelson Mandela Bay. When the DA and its coalition partners were ousted in 2018, it was delivering services to 112,000 poor families in the city of Nelson Mandela Bay. Last year, at the end of the last financial year, under an ANC government, we were only delivering 3 basic services to 42,000 poor families. We have lost 60% of the poor, not because they're less poor, but because the administration was so dysfunctional under an ANC government. That is the service delivery that a dysfunctional ANC provides. It even makes the poor poorer. So I dispute that, and the proof is in the pudding. The reality is, if you look at our budgets are aligned to development in our informal settlements. And informal settlements in Nelson Mandela Bay were some of the worst run informal settlements in the country. And I link that again to our housing delivery, that for the past couple of years, housing delivery came to a grinding halt. That's whilst we've got a 90,000 backlog in housing delivery. Imagine delivering 28 houses. That is what the ANC government delivered.
In order to sustain what you say is great work that the Democratic Alliance has done,
and its coalition partners,
its coalition partners, whoever emerges at the helm of the Democratic Alliance at the end of this Congress, they say usually how everyone else behaves at the bottom is how you were led. What kind of leadership needs to emerge from this Congress that will take the Democratic Alliance forward?
The amazing thing about the Democratic Alliance is that we really don't have factionalism. Yes, now and again, here and there, in certain pockets of the country. But the amazing thing
still
about...
it's there.
Yeah, but the amazing thing about our party is that when there is a leadership election like we see here, whoever's going to emerge the winner will take the loser with him or her, and will continue to build the party. We don't see the kind of backstabbing and massive factionalism that you see in the ruling party in the ANC these days. And that, I think, is testament to the democratic processes that we have in our party.
But it's not all perfect, I know that you're in the mayor
no political party is perfect, and we never said we are.
Nobody said that you're perfect, but of course, you say that there isn't the kind of factionalism that you would see, for example, in the ANC, but your party is also fraught with its own challenges where some would say black leaders hardly stay in the party. When they leave, they don't have savory words to say about your political party. There are a number of examples regarding that. How do you aspire that kind of confidence? You talk about, looking at budgets that will also speak to the poorest of the poor in areas where you, for example, are governing with your coalition partners. But how do you convince, the ordinary South African, if you want to say the Democratic Alliance is to remove itself as just being an opposition in Parliament, but to appeal to a potential voter on a national level?
Well, firstly, I want to say that the DA is not just a party of opposition. We govern a lot of municipalities, more than 50 municipalities across South Africa, and we govern them well. 8 out of the top 10 municipalities are governed by the Democratic Alliance, and we've got a proven track record as how we do it. If you look at outside at Congress and how diverse our party is, that's the real Democratic Alliance, not the Democratic Alliance that the ANC wants to portray or any of our other opposition parties. The reality is we are the most diverse party in South Africa
today. But it's also being most diverse, but it's also being portrayed by senior members of your own political party who've since left They said we no longer want to be part of the Democratic. You certainly cannot. This is not just the rank and file, without being condescending. This is not just the rank and file of the Democratic Alliance. These are senior, credible members with institutional memory of the Democratic Alliance who've decided to leave.
Well, the reality is people come and go, and I think that anybody needs to concede that any political party, you'll see people come and you'll see people go.
But you need to introspect, don't you? I spoke to the chief whip of the Democratic Alliance just a couple of moments ago, just before you came on, and she spoke about introspecting to look at possibly what is wrong within the Democratic Alliance, or to ask members of the DA, where do you feel alienated? Where can we fix that? Wouldn't you think that would be better leadership to find? If people leave, you don't just say, leave, go on, start your own political party, but actually look at yourselves and say, what is it perhaps that we may have done wrong to chase away? They certainly seem like they say that they've been chased away.
I would be very frank with you. I've been in this party for many, many years and in many positions. And I'm certainly not concerned about anybody leaving the party because it's a natural occurrence. It happens in other political parties. It happens in the private sector as well. People come and people go. And yes, we do have that introspective because we are a party where everybody basically within our party is equal. They come from the branches, and through their branches they have a say. So we're not... we're a federal party. We don't just take decisions at the top and implement it. They come through from the branches. So if you're unhappy, you have a say. And that is what makes the Democratic Alliance so much different.
Retief Odendaal, thank you very much for joining us on the program. All the best of luck. Continue in the Nelson Mandela Bay with your coalition partners, all right? Retief Odendaal chatting to us there. He's the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay.